You ever listen to someone talk and something just doesn't sit right? Their words sound fine, but something feels off? You can't quite explain it, but deep down your gut knows. That's because liars don't just hide behind stories, they hide behind words. And there's one word in particular that almost every liar uses, a word that sounds harmless, but quietly chips away at your credibility every time it leaves your mouth. Here's the truth: this word doesn't just make liars sound fake, it makes you sound uncertain. It turns confident truth into weak defense. And most people use it without even realizing how much power they're giving away. Today I'm going to show you how to spot it, stop it, and speak with the kind of clarity that no one can twist against you. Liars over-explain because they fear doubt. You'll notice it the moment you start paying attention. They don't just answer a question, they perform. Their tone changes, their story starts to stretch, and instead of clarity, you get chaos. It's not that they're trying to make you understand the truth, they're trying to make you believe something they don't even fully believe themselves. That's the difference between someone speaking from honesty and someone speaking from insecurity. The honest person doesn't need to fill silence with words. The liar can't stand silence, because silence gives the listener space to think. And when you think, you start to see cracks. That's why they rush to fill every second with detail, unnecessary details. They'll tell you what time it was, what color shirt they were wearing, how the weather felt, things that don't matter to the story but matter to them because they're terrified of being questioned. It's not communication. It's camouflage. They believe the more they say, the less you'll look closely. But it doesn't work that way. Over-explaining doesn't build trust. It broadcasts fear. It tells you, I don't trust that you'll believe me, so I'm going to force you to. You see, people who tell the truth don't worry about being doubted. They understand that truth is self-sustaining. It doesn't crumble under silence. It doesn't need approval to exist. But lies? Lies depend on belief to survive. Without your attention, without your agreement, they die. That's why liars overcompensate. Because deep down they feel the instability of what they're saying. They feel the gap between what's real and what's rehearsed, and they try to fill it with noise. The more they talk, the more control they think they have. But ironically, the more they talk, the more control they lose. Every extra word becomes a thread they have to keep track of. Every added detail becomes a new potential crack in the story. That's why over time lies fall apart, not because someone finds the truth, but because the liar forgets which version they told. Truth doesn't need a memory, it's consistent. Lies require constant maintenance. But let's talk about what this means for you. Because this isn't just about spotting liars, it's about how you communicate too. Most people don't realize how often they over-explain, not because they're lying, but because they're afraid of being misunderstood. You say, sorry, too many times. You justify your boundaries. You explain your decisions in circles, hoping no one gets upset. And every time you do, you're giving away your power. Over-explaining might come from a good place, but it still communicates fear. It tells people you're seeking permission instead of standing in conviction. You don't owe everyone a full breakdown of your choices. You don't need to prove your intentions to anyone who's already decided how they want to see you. When you know who you are and what you mean, you don't chase understanding. You invite it. There's a difference. Chasing it means you're desperate for acceptance. Inviting it means you're open to connection but not dependent on it. So next time you feel yourself starting to over-explain, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I afraid they'll think if I don't say more? That's usually where the truth lies. Most of the time, what you're really trying to defend is your self-worth. You're afraid of being doubted, dismissed, or disapproved of. But confidence doesn't grow by explaining yourself into exhaustion. It grows by realizing you don't have to. The calmest people in the room aren't the ones saying the most. They're the ones saying the least but meaning every word. They don't race to fill the silence. Because they're not afraid of it. They know silence is not weakness, it's composure. It's control. And when someone tries to manipulate or test them, they don't bite. They let the liar over-explain themselves into exposure. That's the secret to seeing through dishonesty, and the secret to speaking with strength. You don't have to defend every truth. You just have to own it. When you do, your words carry a different kind of weight, the kind that doesn't need convincing, the kind that can't be faked, the kind that makes people stop, listen, and realize they're standing in front of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. Because that's what real confidence sounds like: quiet, certain, unshakable. Honestly. It sounds harmless, right? But the moment someone says it, something shifts. It's a word meant to strengthen what follows, but more often, it does the opposite. It weakens it. It plants doubt where there was none. Because when someone starts a sentence with, honestly, it makes you wonder, were they not being honest before? Why do they need to announce their truth instead of just speaking it? That one word reveals insecurity, not integrity. It's a filler we use when we want our words to sound believable. But true confidence doesn't need verbal permission to be trusted. People say, honestly, to convince, not to connect. It's a subtle plea for credibility. It's the verbal version of trying too hard. And when you try too hard to sound truthful, you stop being truthful. Because real truth doesn't need to beg for belief. Think about it. When someone's speaking from confidence, they don't pause to assure you with, honestly, or to tell you the truth. They just tell it calmly, directly, without theatrics. But when someone's nervous, when they fear disbelief, when they crave validation, that's when, honestly, slips out. It's like a nervous tick. This is what makes it dangerous, not because it's a lie, but because it signals doubt. It tells the listener, I need you to believe me, instead of, here's what I believe. And those are two very different energies. The first chases approval. The second commands respect. The word honestly tries to do the heavy lifting of integrity that your tone, your energy, and your consistency should already be doing. If your truth needs a booster word, then you haven't built enough trust behind it. Here's the truth about honestly. It's a mask we wear when we don't feel safe to speak plainly. We use it to soften tension, to seem sincere, to make our statements land better. But every time we do, we train our brains to associate truth with insecurity, like we have to justify it. The more you use it, the weaker your words become, because you start relying on the word to carry the weight of your intention instead of your conviction. That's why people who sound powerful don't use it. Their tone does the work. Their composure is the talking. Imagine this. Someone looks at you and says, honestly, I respect you. Sounds polite, right? But part of you doesn't buy it. Now take away the honestly, I respect you. Feels cleaner, stronger. You feel the difference immediately. That's because the first version feels like a performance, like the person is trying to convince you respect instead of showing it. The second feels authentic. It doesn't try to earn trust, it embodies it. Words are powerful, but intention is louder. So why do we keep saying it? Because most of us are conditioned to manage how we're perceived rather than stand in what we believe. We're afraid of being misunderstood. We think if we add a few softeners, honestly, to be fair, if I'm being real, people will take us more seriously. But what actually happens is the opposite. The moment you start over justifying your truth, people start questioning it, not because it's false, but because it sounds unsure. The human brain picks up on micro signals of uncertainty. Honestly is one of them. So here's what you do instead. Speak plainly. Cut the fluff. When you mean something, say it without preamble. Don't tell people you're being honest. Be honest. The power of your truth lies in your delivery, not your decoration, your calm tone, your eye contact, your choice to stop explaining once you've made your point. That's what makes your words land. That's what separates authority from anxiety. When you stop using honestly as a crutch, you start rebuilding your credibility. People begin to trust that when you speak, you mean it. Without extra confirmation, your words start carrying weight, not because they sound right, but because they feel right. And when someone lies or overcompensates around you, you'll notice that word appear more and more. Honestly. To be honest. I'm telling you the truth. You'll see it for what it is. A tell. A signal of insecurity hiding behind forced sincerity. But here's where the real shift happens once you remove honestly from your vocabulary. You'll start removing doubt from your energy. You'll stop waiting for others to validate your truth. You'll begin speaking with calm conviction. The kind that doesn't need reassurance because it already knows. The kind that doesn't chase belief because it stands firm in clarity. So the next time you feel, honestly, on the tip of your tongue, pause. Replace it with silence. Let your truth stand without introduction. Watch how people lean in, not because you told them to believe you, but because they want to. That's real power, the kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that doesn't beg. The kind that doesn't need a word like honestly to prove it's real, because truth, when spoken with certainty, doesn't need decoration. It simply stands. Truth doesn't chase approval. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't beg to be seen or believed. It simply holds its ground. The strongest truths are often the quietest ones because they don't have to fight to exist. They just do. When you stand in your truth, you don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to over-explain, over-defend, or over-prove. You let your consistency do the talking. You let time reveal what's real. Because here's the truth about truth, it doesn't fear being questioned. Only lies do. When someone challenges your truth, your instinct might be to argue harder, to shout louder, to prove your point beyond any doubt. But that's not strength, that's insecurity in disguise. True confidence in what you believe doesn't crumble under disagreement. It doesn't panic when misunderstood. It stays grounded, calm, and steady. The moment you start pleading for others to understand you, you hand them your power. The moment you start explaining too much, you make your truth sound negotiable. But truth is never negotiable. It just is. Think about this. The more desperate someone is to make you believe them, the less you do. That's because confidence and desperation speak two completely different languages. Desperation says, please trust me. Confidence says, you'll see it for yourself. The first is loud, frantic, and uncertain. The second is quiet, patient, and sure. And that's the beauty of real truth. It knows time as its ally. It doesn't rush validation. It waits, because it knows everything false eventually collapses under its own weight. When someone accuses you of something untrue or twists your words, it's tempting to fight back, to defend every angle. But the more you engage, the deeper you sink into their chaos. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stop explaining and start embodying. Let your actions speak where your words no longer need to. Because real truth doesn't always shout in defense. Sometimes it whispers in composure. And people hear that whisper louder than any argument. Truth doesn't perform. It doesn't put on a show for people's comfort. It's not dressed up to please or polished to impress. It's raw, simple, and often uncomfortable. But it's solid. When you stand in it, you don't have to chase belief. You let others doubt. You let them misjudge. You let them talk. Because you know the truth has something they don't: endurance. Lies are temporary. They burn bright and fade fast. Truth is slow, steady, and unshakable. It might take time to be seen, but when it is, it lasts. You see, validation feels good in the moment, but it's a trap. It teaches your confidence to depend on external approval. It tricks you into believing your worth or your honesty is only as strong as the number of people who agree with you. But truth doesn't need agreement to exist. It doesn't need applause to stay true. The sun doesn't stop shining because someone says it's dark. Your truth doesn't stop being real because someone refuses to see it. When you understand this, your energy changes. You stop arguing to be understood. You stop explaining to be accepted. You start speaking from calm assurance instead of emotional defense. And people can feel that shift. They sense when someone's grounded in truth versus when someone's grasping for it. A grounded truth has gravity. It pulls people in naturally. You don't need to convince anyone. They just feel it. And here's something most people miss. The more secure you are in your truth, the less you need to talk about it. You become comfortable with silence. You realize that peace isn't found in winning debates. It's found in knowing you don't need to. You begin to let go of the need to be right in every conversation because deep down you already know you are. Not from ego, but from clarity. There's a quiet confidence that comes from no longer defending your truth, only living it. That's what makes truth powerful. It doesn't rely on volume, emotion, or approval. It holds its ground with composure, not confrontation. It doesn't chase anyone, it just waits. And that patience, that unbothered steadiness, is what exposes everything false around it. You don't have to expose liars. They expose themselves the moment they start to panic while you remain calm. You don't have to correct every misrepresentation. Truth corrects itself with time. So if you ever feel pressured to defend yourself, remember this: your truth doesn't need a stage to be seen or a crowd to be believed. It needs only you to stand in it quietly, firmly, and consistently. Because truth isn't proven through debate. It's proven through endurance. The one who keeps their peace in chaos always wins in the end. The one who doesn't react to lies but continues to live truthfully ends up revealing more through action than words ever could. Truth doesn't beg for validation. It stands tall even when doubted. It doesn't tremble under accusation or shrink under disbelief. It waits, it holds, and it always rises above noise because real truth doesn't compete with lies, it outlasts them. And when the dust settles, when the noise fades, when every performance ends, truth will still be standing, steady, quiet, and undeniable. Clarity is strength. It doesn't need to persuade, it doesn't chase approval, and it doesn't crumble when questioned. When you're clear about who you are, what you mean, and what you stand for, you don't have to convince anyone to see your side. You stop over-explaining because you finally understand that understanding isn't owed. It's earned through consistency. Convincing is for when you're uncertain. But clarity, it speaks for itself. When you speak from clarity, your words carry weight because they come from alignment, not anxiety. You're not trying to make people agree with you. You're expressing something that's already true for you. That difference changes everything. People can feel when you're grounded in clarity versus when you're desperate to be believed. One draws respect, the other draws resistance. Clarity doesn't argue. It simply states what is. Most people exhaust themselves trying to be convincing, thinking that the louder or more emotional they are, the more others will believe them. But the truth is, convincing energy often pushes people away. It signals uncertainty. The more you try to sell your truth, the cheaper it begins to sound. But clarity doesn't sell. It declares. It's calm, precise, and steady. It's not about having the perfect words. It's about having a clean intention. When your message is clear, your tone naturally carries confidence. Clarity also brings peace. You no longer feel the need to argue every opinion or defend every action. You can let others misunderstand you because you understand yourself. You don't chase agreement because you know your direction. You stop trying to win every conversation and start focusing on speaking truthfully, even if it's not received the way you want. That kind of restraint is powerful. It shows maturity, control, and self-assurance. Convincing comes from insecurity. Clarity comes from self-trust. When you know your truth, you don't need to decorate it or disguise it to make it appealing. You don't change your message depending on who's listening. You stay consistent. And over time, people start to recognize that your calmness isn't weakness. It's certainty. That's what separates leaders from talkers, truth tellers from performers. So don't aim to be convincing, aim to be clear. Because when your message is clear, it doesn't need force, it carries power all on its own. Clarity doesn't chase belief, it commands it. Confidence is quiet because it has nothing to hide. It doesn't need to shout to be heard or prove to be believed. Real confidence walks into a room and changes the atmosphere, not because it demands attention, but because it doesn't. It's the calm energy that says, I know who I am. I don't need your approval to confirm it. That kind of presence can't be faked, and it can't be taught in a day. It's built from countless moments of restraint, self-respect, and choosing silence over validation. See, people who are unsure of themselves often talk the most. They explain, justify, and perform, not because they want to communicate, but because they want to convince. They crave assurance that they're enough. But the truth is, confidence doesn't crave anything. It's not a performance, it's a presence. It's the person who doesn't argue every misunderstanding because they know time and truth will handle it. It's the one who doesn't chase recognition because they're already operating from self-worth. Quiet confidence doesn't mean you're passive or weak. It means you've learned that noise doesn't equal strength. It's understanding that stillness is power. Anyone can talk loudly, but very few can stand calmly while the world tests them. That's what separates the grounded from the fragile, the ability to stay composed when others try to provoke reaction. When you've built confidence from truth, not ego, you stop needing to prove it. And that's where real freedom lies. Because here's the thing, people who know who they are don't need to announce it. They show it through their consistency, their boundaries, and their peace. Their confidence is in their silence, in how they walk away from chaos instead of competing with it. They don't need to make others feel small to feel big. They don't need to win every argument because they're not fighting for validation. They're protecting their peace. That quiet confidence is unshakable. You can hear it in how they speak, slow, clear, and intentional. You can see it in their posture, steady, not stiff. You can feel it in their presence, calm, not cold. They've mastered the art of not reacting, and that's what makes them powerful. Because the moment you stop reacting to everything that tries to pull you off balance, you become untouchable. You move from trying to be understood to simply being undeniable. Confidence doesn't need to announce itself because it's not built on performance, it's built on proof. The proof that you faced hard things and didn't break. The proof that you've been misunderstood and stayed grounded. The proof that you've learned how to stay calm in rooms that once made you small. That's the kind of quiet that can't be shaken, the kind that speaks volumes without saying a word. And the beautiful thing about this quiet confidence is that it inspires others. People notice it. They may not always say it, but they feel it. They start to question their own noise, the constant explaining, the constant proving. Because when your calmness holds more power than their shouting, that's when you've already won. You didn't need to argue. You didn't need to dominate. You just needed to stay centered in truth. So, when you walk into the next conversation, the next challenge, the next storm, remember this: you don't have to speak the loudest to be the strongest. You don't have to prove your worth to people who can't see it. Confidence doesn't live in volume. It lives in quiet certainty. You'll know you've found it when your peace becomes louder than their noise. That's real confidence. That's real control. And that's where this all ends. Not in a shout, not in a fight, but in stillness. because the loudest voice in the room isn't always the most powerful. The calmest one usually is.